October. Now we're going? All right, that's way better. Now I can hear it. Included in the packet is library board minutes from October and MUB minutes from October. Item 6 is announcements and praise. I want to take a moment to pray. Join me if you'd like to. Heavenly Father, we come before you. We thank you for a beautiful day, even though it's cold. We thank you for this community. We thank you for this country. We submit our plans to you and hope that we can glorify you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I have a few notes here on Marketplace, still open downtown. A lot of activity there for sure. I believe next Saturday there's going to be Santa Claus down there for the kids, so some excitement there. Anybody else have anything for announcements and praise? Christmas holiday season is definitely busy. Go ahead, Lisa.
Mr. Mayor, City Manager is available by phone, so if anybody in the audience would like to talk, we'd ask that they come forward so he can be heard.
Yep. Council have anything to add? Item 7 is staff update. Mr. Bush is here to give us an update on Public Works, and we appreciate that, Rick.
Evening, Mayor and Council. Rick Bush, Public Works Director for the City of Sturgis. I guess I'll start off. They've asked me to give a little bit of a synopsis of the 2021 year for Public Works. For those that don't know, Public Works consists of 7 divisions with 28 operators, 2 administrative staff, and 6 management team members. So when you think of Public Works, a lot of people think that we're a very big organization. We're really not. When you break down the 28 operators amongst the 7 divisions, that equals out to just about 3 operators per division. So not necessarily that big. We were not unlike any other entity or division or department within the city. We experienced ongoing issues related to COVID. Kind of last year never really ended, 2020, and it carried right through into 2021, and in some instances even got worse. As we started to see supply chains slow down, we were starting to get shortages on materials, on devices, on equipment that we need. That further complicated our mission, but we were still able to get a number of good accomplishments done for the year. And I just wanted to take a minute and highlight a few of those throughout each of the 7 divisions. We have a fleet division, which is a new division to Public Works, and they're responsible for managing the entire city fleet. Everything from our Public Works and all our other divisions there to finance, to planning and permitting, police, basically everything except for fire and ambulance. And from time to time, we do help them out as well if we're able to. But we were able to keep things running smoothly despite being short-staffed most of the year. We had one of our 3 mechanics out for an extended period on an injury. And so we were short-staffed. We were able to still get things done and meet those challenges. One of the other things that we were able to do this year is we were able to adjust our inventory, which was one of the goals when we created the fleet division, to better fit our needs and operations. And what I mean by that is not having things on hand that we don't necessarily need, or we got to a point where when we started cleaning stuff, we had parts and filters and things for equipment that we didn't even have. Because at the time when we bought them, we bought a case of them and then we never ever used them. And so we better manage that now more on a weekly and monthly basis. And that's proven to be both more financially responsible, but allows us to save on some space too. And then, the other thing that probably was a major accomplishment this year was we were able to troubleshoot and fix some of our older equipment that we'd had reoccurring issues with. Things that in the past we just weren't able to get the job done and get them fixed. We took the time out of the year to do that and actually find out what was wrong with them and fix them and put them back into service. So that was a good thing. Streets, without saying, we had another successful rally. Probably one of the bigger events was the 21 inches of snow that we received in October, kind of a Atlas 2 again. Subsequently, that led us to handling over 700 loads of branches from our residential customers. I think that as far as I know, we were the only community anywhere in the Western Black Hills that offered curbside pickup. And we did that and we managed it well. And I think it was a great service that we were able to give to our citizens and to our residents. And it proved to be very, very successful. Snow removal, we continue to try and step up our game on snow removal. We're continuing to look at advanced techniques for snow removal. This year we'll be trying a new liquid chemical. It's different than what we used last year. It seems like everything continues to evolve, and we work very closely with the DOT to try new products as they do as well. This new product that we're going to be using this year is an ice slicer. It's more of a reddish color, and it smells a lot like teriyaki sauce. So if you smell that, that's what it is, and you'll see it. It will stain the roads, not stain them, but you'll be able to see it probably a little bit more than the mag water and things of that we were using before. You'll see when we use those pencil streams down the road, and what we're doing is we're trying to not allow for that bond of the snow and the pavement. So there's certain pavement temperatures when we can apply that. We apply that pre-storm, and we can apply it after the storm, but for the most part, we'll be applying it pre-storm to try and prevent that bond. What that does is it allows us to clean the streets quicker and more effectively and efficiently, and not have as much on wear parts on our cutting edges and things on our blades. So you'll see us doing that. Parks and Cemetery, this year we were able to complete every single sports field within the city, to include the Fort Meade fields, all have new dugouts. We got that finished up. That's been an ongoing project over the last couple of years, but we did finish that. We also poured, each field has a concrete pad now for the bleachers, which again just kind of cleans things up. We don't have to worry about weeds underneath, things of that nature, and it gives it a more stable base to sit on, and starts to bring us into ADA compliance too. We've poured a lot of sidewalks, and with those pads, we're able to oversize them and create areas where somebody that is in a wheelchair or has a walker or whatnot is able to get to those. Have several residents that have communicated to us that before they weren't able to go to their grandchildren's games because of the rough surfaces, and now they can. So I think that's a huge plus, not only for the city, but for our residents as well. All the park shelters this year have been painted. Of course, our new chain link fence down at the soccer fields, you can't hardly miss that. That's a tremendous, both from a safety and an aesthetic standpoint, really great project. Parks crews, in addition to what we hauled off, the 700 loads that we hauled off from the residents, the parks crews have hauled off 163 loads out of all the city parks of branches. One of the other things that was needed and we were able to accomplish this year was developing a new area in the cemetery. With doing that opened up about 575 new burial plots. So something that was needed. Sanitation, we just completed our yearly Danner inspection. Didn't have any issues there. Kind of to recap, we hauled 545 tons of rally garbage. To put that in perspective, on the 75th, we hauled about 750 tons. Year to date, we've hauled about 5,053 tons to Belfouche. Average truck will hold about 11 to 12 tons, sometimes a little bit more, just depending on if it's wet or not. Our water division, this year we've updated our SCADA system, and that enables us to create efficiencies in that operation and reduces our overtime and our call outs, because we're able to, the on-call guy simply and the water superintendent, myself, can monitor that from home. We get a message on our cell phone if there's a SCADA alarm. We can choose to acknowledge it, or if we need to, we can send somebody out to see what's going on. We've made leaps and bounds progress on our smart points this year. The smart points are what enable us to remotely read water accounts. We don't have to rely back on the old days where you had to physically go read the meters every year at every home. Now we can do those in driving routes. and hopefully in the somewhat future, it'll even become a remote application where we don't even have to drive down the streets. One of the things I did want to bring up too was the council reduced the water rates. We did just get the new 2021 utility study, and I know Daniel intends to talk to you guys a little bit more in depth on that in the upcoming months, but I will share with you our current rate of $34.08 is lower than Spearfish at $35.80, Rapid Valley at $39.89, Deadwood at $40.45, Box Elder at $45.61. And when I give you these communities that they're comparable communities, those are communities that also use deep well or groundwater as a water source. It's hard to compare your operational costs for a surface water versus a deep well. It's apples and oranges. But overall, throughout both the Black Hills area, the region, and actually the study goes into several states: Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming. Our rates you're going to find are very, very competitive, and in most cases we're in the top tier of having the lowest rates across all of the utilities. So job well done. And Daniel's worked hard at getting that accomplished. So kudos to you and him. And then finally, without saying our wastewater, I guess the biggest accomplishment of the year is certainly going to be putting our new plant online. We've finished all of the performance testing and done our mandatory testing period, which enables us to ensure to the state that we're meeting requirements before we can put it live online. Happy to report that December 1st, we actually did go live online. We haven't had any hiccups since. And to date, we are greatly exceeding our limits for testing. And what I mean there is our limits, in most cases, are coming back non-detectable. So that's a great thing. If you remember a few years back, we had received funding for just over $17 million through the state SRF, with just a little bit over $1 million in grant money. That included not only this facility, but the East Annex, the lift station, in the interceptor line. All of those projects have now been completed. The plant itself was a guaranteed maximum price of $14.9 million. I'll be giving you a report, I believe, at the next council meeting, be a little bit more in-depth detail items on the plant. But I can tell you that there was a plant that was almost identical in footprint and size in Montana that bid earlier this year, and it was just shy of $50 million. So we hit that one. We got lucky and hit that one at the right time. Finally, I'm going to close with we're attracting a lot of both local and national level attention on that plant. And so far here in the last couple of weeks, I've actually been reached out to and asked to co-present both the South Dakota Rural Water Association Technical Conference in Pierre in January, and also the American Water Works Association American Membrane Technology Conference in Las Vegas on February. So what that means is there's a lot of people interested in this technology, and they're interested in hearing how our project went. And I think that anytime that we can garnish good news for our city and people wanting to know, that helps us to attract employees, and it gives us, a sense of pride and confidence in what we're doing. So I think that we'll see more and more of that on that plant. And hopefully everybody realizes what a big deal that is, because I don't think a lot of times people do, but it truly is the state of the art, and it's the first one in the state, which is going to bring with it a lot of prestige. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Thanks, Rick.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Item 8 is city manager's report. We're going to have Daniel via phone do that. So, Mr. Ainsley, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. We have a couple changes in some of our general fund departments, in the community center, and then also in the liquor store. Just to point out, Then the next is we have a new appointment to our downtown bid board. Terry Joe with Sturgis Photo and Gifts. She turned in an application and will be a great fit for the downtown bid board and the foundation. And then lastly, an update on the medical marijuana dispensary. We received numerous applications. Our finance officer is reviewing all of those applications. They will be presented to the council on December 20th. And then a lottery to choose the two will have to be completed during a council meeting by January 19th. Are there any questions?
Council, any questions for Daniel? Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you.
So I guess just as an update or to repeat what Daniel said, the 20th is when those applications are going to be presented, and then by the way the law is written, we have 30 days to act, which gives us till January 19th for the lottery to occur. So item 9 is consent calendar. We have 1 through 4 today. Does council wish to remove any of those and discuss them individually? How about anybody in the public? 1 through 4 in the consent calendar. Wish to remove any of those items and discuss them individually. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Got a first by Jason.
Second.
We have a second by Angela. We'll go ahead and roll call since we have minutes. Mike, we'll start with you.
Yes.
Angela?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
I'm yes. Becca?
Yes.
Dean?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
And Jason.
Yes.
Consent calendar passes unanimously. Item 10 is claims. A lot of money, but relatively small compared to some of the meetings. Council have any questions on any of those claims?
I have one.
Go ahead, Mike.
I know it's going to come up in the public, and I'm not going to be able to answer it, so I'll ask it here. On page 6, we have the Boulder Canyon Country Club for fees of $2,600.
That shouldn't have been on there. We were trying to get that not to be on there. We're still working on that. So as a sponsorship situation that we have discussed, but I'm glad you caught that because I looked through those and didn't see them. But
There.
Yep. So go ahead and if you don't have any other questions, if you want to make a motion minus that.
So we are pulling that, Mayor?
Yep.
Okay.
I would move to approve the claims minus the set fees of $2,600 for the
BCCC.
BCCC. Yeah.
We have a first on the floor.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Yep. Second by Becca. Any other discussion from council on the claims? How about public input on the claims? We'll go ahead and roll call this since we're paying bills. Jason, we'll start with you.
Yes.
Aaron.
Yes.
Dean.
Yes.
Becca.
Yes.
I'm yes. Kevin.
Yes.
Angela.
Yes.
And Mike.
Yes.
Bills are paid. Item 11 is public hearings. Subset 1 is the public hearing for the renewal of the liquor and wine licenses for 2022. Faye has got the staff report, so I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is, of course, happens with us once a year. This is for wine, on sale wine, and on sale and on off sale wine licenses. We have actually the renewal of 2 off sale licenses, 8 on sale, and 21 on off sale wine licenses. We receive around $12,000 in fees from the on sale liquor and $10,500 in fees from the on off wine licenses. And I did attach, and it is up on the screen, the licenses that you will be renewing. And I would like Chief Vandewater to come up. He has a few things he'd like to tell you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I thought it'd be a good time to talk about some open container issues and
what we witnessed this year, between Music on Main and our open container during the rally. So it's more of an FYI for you guys, but this year, we've been doing Music on Main for quite a few years, but we've never had a law enforcement presence down on Music on Main. And this year we tried that as far as so that we could start addressing some violations as far as education wise. And just so you guys know, we did have violations almost every evening, and with the exception of one evening out of the 6 weeks, I believe it was, of the Music on Main, and those were addressed by educating the citizens as well as trying to work with the bars there. But they were violations that range from people bringing their own alcohol to people having mixed drinks out in the open alcohol or open container area, or not having the proper alcohol in the proper cup. So then we move on to the rally. During the rally, I spoke with a few of you guys with the violations we've seen. One thing that was learned is, and I'm not doing this for any penalty, I'm just doing it more of an education, maybe something that we can try to proactively work at with establishments and my office as well to make it successful. But one of the things we noticed was no one this year had the staffing to be able to officially enforce the open containers. All the establishments were busy. They were strained to get the proper staffing, and as you know, there's hundreds and hundreds of people coming in a matter of minutes through 20 different exits or entrances of their buildings. So I will say that I met with just about every bar owner, manager, and employees, and they were all willing to tried to do their best, but at the end of the day, they were shorthanded. But I do believe we can do a better job. And when I say we, I believe the city as well as maybe the establishments working together to get a little better education, a little better publicity out there. One of the things that was confused talking with some of the bar staff is they didn't know what the directions were. So I think maybe if we look at doing this again next year, we need to take a proactive approach and trying to visit with them, do some education. Last thing I want to do is be enforcing, but I think we can still work on education and maybe doing some PSAs as far as getting some proper signage. That was one of the biggest things, proper signage and clear rules and regulations of what's expected. And like I said, I think all of them would work hand in hand with us. They were all great when I personally talked to them, and they're all willing to do what they can. But at the end of the day, when you're short-staffed, you can only do so much. So I just kind of want to touch bases and bring that to your knowledge so that you guys are aware. And maybe as we move forward into 2022, we can be proactive with trying to find ways to make it successful for everybody. So if you have any questions, I'll stand by.
With that, Chief, no violations or situations that arise that makes it difficult to renew any of these licenses?
No, as far as anything for renewing these, I don't have any issues with any of these being renewed. This is more of just an information that I thought it'd be a good time just to put my 2 cents in as far as any big events where we have open containers, trying to help make it successful for the establishments and trying to keep them from. Last thing we want to do is allow them to violate the laws, but we want to make sure they understand the laws so that they don't go with an uneducated guess and end up violating them, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Appreciate it. Council, have any other questions for Chief?
Chief, you didn't issue any warnings or anything like that to bar owners or license owners?
I would say the owners we visited with, as far as education, asking for compliance, they were very, they worked with us. They were great to work with. They understood that they were struggling. We had them going out, trying to get cups, trying to find more staff to make it to be in compliance. So they were trying the best they can. At the end of the day, it was the same thing as anybody else that's running a business. There was not enough help to go around. When you look at thousands of people coming into our town, and you got hundreds of them in a matter of minutes and hours going in and out of that facility, any of the facilities here in town, it's actually chaos. It's tough to keep track. So as far as any warnings, no, we worked on education this year and worked on education as well as with the general public.
Thank you.
Any other discussion from council? How about public discussion on renewal of licenses, liquor, on, off sale, and wine? Is there a motion?
I move to approve the renewals.
Got a first by Kevin to approve.
Second.
Got a second by Aaron. Any last discussion, public or council? All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. That motion carries. Item 2 under public hearing is for a transfer of an on-sale liquor license from One Eye Jack's Pete Gold to One Eye Jack's Saloon USA of Okan, Aviclar. I hope I was close. Faye has the staff report too,
Yeah,
please.
would you like to come up and just introduce yourself, and then we'll go ahead so that you all can meet Okan?
Up to the microphone, please.
Hi, my name is Okan Avcılar. We are pretty close. And, actually, I'm from Daytona Beach, Florida, and I'm coming to Sturgis last 19 years. I do a lot of product for bikers, biker apparels, under print art, screen printing from Daytona and bikerlife.com. So I always, I was a biker myself in Daytona, and then I get in the biker apparel business, and it was one of my dreams to be in the biker bar, and finally we made it happen. And this year, me and Pete, since it's my first year, we're gonna continue to work together, and hopefully we gonna be as good as before, and hopefully we make it better.
Oh,
Any
thank
questions?
you. Thank you for coming to Sturgis.
Thank you.
So we'll be looking forward to the rally this year.
Thank you.
Faye, do you have anything to add from the staff report?
Just that we have did a background check. We have got all the necessary paperwork, the affidavit from Pete, everything that needs to go to Pier. So my recommendation would be to approve the transfer.
Any further public discussion or council discussion on the transfer of said license? Is there a motion?
So moved.
And first by Dean,
Second.
second by Mike. Any last discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. The transfer carries. Item 3 is the renewal of the transferred liquor license. Included with that is all the necessary paperwork. So,
Correct, Mayor.
yeah. Any public input on the renewal of the newly transferred license? Council questions, comments, concerns? Is there a
Move to
motion?
approve.
Got a first by Mike to approve. Have a second by Becca for the renewal. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. That motion carries. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 4 is consideration for a variance of minimum plating requirements on 3rd Street. Mr. Smith's got the staff report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The first item before you is a variance request that was submitted by the property owner, Russ Ulrich, for the minimum plating requirements. He purchased a property that had 2 homes on one parcel, wants to split those. Initially, he wanted 2 variances, one to the size of the lot and the second one to the frontage. Planning and zoning said, no, you have to go with the less. So he increased the frontage to 50 feet, but the lot size at 710 and 714 3rd Street, the one lot will be less than the required 6,000 square feet. Right now, it's currently a pre-existing, that's a daycare. Yeah, there we go. Did I start with the wrong one? Faye?
You're on the right one. It was in the packet wrong.
Okay. All right. Anyway, it's a pre-existing non-conforming use, as there are 2 separate single-family residences on the one parcel. The purpose of this application, again, is to subdivide the property so each residential structure is on its own lot. At the time of the application, the applicant submitted the variance, like I said, for both the lot size and the lot frontage. That was brought to planning and zoning, and again, they said, no, we want the lot frontage to meet the requirement, and we'll go ahead and give you, make it approval to the council for the lot size. There were some letters sent out, and there was some landowner testimony from around it, and I'll just read those into the record here. Even though Russ has added one parking space, there's still not enough parking for a 5-bedroom house. From what I understand, the lots aren't large enough to split. On the main house that you see is on the top, he did add off-street parking to it where there was no off-street parking before. So now there is adequate parking for that house. It meets the minimum requirements. The next comment, there's a major parking problem along this area. Residents have to park on the street if they have 2 vehicles, and most do. The street is narrow. When the parking on the street makes it one-way traffic difficult on a 2-way street. If Mr. Aldrich plans to make a lot big enough so that 2 vehicles park off the street, we would give our permission. Again, he's already put in the required off-street parking where there was none in the past. And the house on the south side was never supposed to be a house. It was a tool shed that they added onto and tried to make it a house. It's barely big enough for one person. The lot, as is now, is big, not only big enough for one dwelling. If that lot is split, neither lot will be big enough as a residence. There is already a parking problem on this narrow street. When you have one residence that's a 5-bedroom house, you have the possibility of a couple and 4 children of driving age, which, again, the house is already existing, so that could happen anyway, whether he splits it or not. To have 2 properties with limited parking becomes a huge problem. The house on the south side must have been added onto without permission or a permit, as I don't think they would have allowed this, and by approving the split, they're not allowing more of this injustice to go further. So just an added note on that, the structure at 714 3rd Street, the smaller one down to the right, yes, there was a permit that was issued to add on to that home and do some remodeling in 2010. Staff recommends, as the planning and zoning did, recommends approval of the variance to the lot size. And if there are any questions, Shannon is here who drew this up, and I stand for those too.
Is there people currently living in both structures?
Right now, currently, the structures are both empty. He wants to try and sell the main house. He's going to keep the smaller one for his vacation home.
Well, I was just trying to figure out if there's currently cars and situations like that over there.
There were, yes. There was a family living in both homes when he bought the property. And the people that were living in the big house bought their own house. After renting that one for several years, they bought their own home. And then he went in through and put a lot of money in fixing up, remodeled it, and then added, as you can see, the hard surface parking that's next to the garage or next to the house that never existed before.
And that parking is for the large house.
That is correct. And there is off-street parking, as you can see right there, the gravel
On the right side?
on the right side that was pre-existing. He intends to hard surface that this next summer.
And that is going to be the access and parking for the house on the right?
That's correct. As you can see where the cars are parked right now.
Yep.
That's the off-street parking for that house, and he plans on putting the hard surface in there. And where that big tree is at right now, he took that tree out and added the hard surface parking there for the big house.
Dave, you said the parking for the larger house met the requirements. What are the requirements for our house?
400, minimum of 400 square feet. Basically enough to park 2 vehicles. And he can park 2 vehicles. I wouldn't want to park 2 pickups, but you can park 2 vehicles.
Did he just do that hard surface since applying for this variance?
No, he did that before he applied for this variance. He did that after when he got the building permit to do the remodel and everything. We told him that because of what he was spending on 50% of the value, that he would have to bring that up to compliance, and he wanted to anyway, so he did that.
So just to reiterate, Dave, the big house will be put up for sale, and the little house will be kept as a vacation home for himself.
I believe that is his intention, yes. And if he can't sell the big house, he'll put it up as a rental property. But his intent is to sell it.
And how much smaller than the required size is it?
1,000 square feet for the lot size.
You said the requirement was 6,000, so it's 5,000.
That's correct, yes. And the only reason that it is that way, as you can see the way it's brought down, is because of where the second house sits. If you can't run the property line through that, so this way we gave the setback by putting that through. He has a setback for that second house on the side to equalize it out. Otherwise, you would run right up against that property line, and then you'd make the square footage. But to make it so that you didn't have to worry about the second house, that's where it narrowed it down.
So it's 4,146 square feet. That'll be the lot size?
I think that's correct, yes.
Okay, so it's 1,800 less than required. Yeah.
What type of precedence does it set?
I think that we've approved smaller lot sizes in the past since I've been here. Not many, but we haven't had that many that have been asked for.
Right. How about public questions, comments, concerns over this variance? Further discussion from council? Questions for Dave or Shannon?
He's already made substantial improvements.
Is there a motion there?
Yes, I'll move to approve.
Got a first by Mike to approve the variance.
Tricky.
Second. Got a second by Jason. Any last discussion, council or public? None being heard. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. That variance passes 7-1. Item 5 is also Mr. Smith's staff report, and this is a use on review. So back to you, Dave.
This one should be a little easier. It's for a daycare. Tony Berghorst, 1901 Elk Road, has submitted a conditional use and review application to operate an at-home daycare. The applicant is currently working on state registration for a maximum of 12 children in care. Her intended hours of operation will be Monday through Friday from 5:45 a.m. to 6:15 p.m. The applicant intends to provide care for no more than 8 children. An in-home daycare is allowable as a use permitted on review within a medium-density residential housing district. Per the use on review application process, notifications have been made to landowners within the 200 feet of the property, and signage was placed on the property for at least 21 days. A registered family daycare home within the Department of Social Service requires on-site home inspections and additional background information provided at the time of the registration. Non-compliance issues are reported and addressed by Child Care Services. If a complaint regarding the daycare operation is received, the licensing specialist from CCS works with the applicant on a plan of correction, and they do also notify us so that when it comes up for review, that is placed in there that they had that problem, if there is a problem. Inspection and compliance information is available for all registered or licensed daycares on the Department of Social Services website. Staff review concludes that all other attributes as listed in Article 7, Section 2 of Title 18 of the City Ordinances will be met if approved. The conditional use should be reviewed on an annual basis, subject to additional planning commission and city council approval if valid complaints are received by our office or by social services. The planning commission reviewed the application at the November 2nd meeting and voted to recommend the approval of the use on review.
Any questions for Dave? How about public input? Questions, comments, concerns? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Got a first by Aaron to approve the use on review.
Second.
We have a second by Angela. Any last discussion, public or council? All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
Opposed to no. That motion carries. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Item 12 is reports. We went from numbers to letters, so now we're on subset A instead of. That item is consideration approved second reading of supplemental to the 2021 budget. Mr. Ainsley, I have you down for staff report, so I'll turn it over to you. I remember discussions in department heads stating no changes from first reading, but go ahead, Daniel.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. That's all I was going to say.
All right, there you go.
There were no changes.
Yeah, no changes.
Are there any questions?
I think there was an excellent staff report done at the last meeting for the first reading that explained all that, but does council have any questions on this second reading? How about the public? Supplementing the budget so that when December 31st hits, we are not negative in any of the accounts and are good with the state legislative audit.
Are we balanced?
Well, that's a trick question, Mike. I believe there's money left over. These supplemental appropriations, there's money left over. Daniel, go ahead and correct me when I'm wrong, but there's money left over in the general fund, but there's certain departments that have to be supplemented in order to pay for actions that were done throughout the year that were not budgeted from the beginning. But there is extra money.
Yes, and so there's revenue beyond what we had anticipated. We have revenue that's higher than what we had anticipated when we passed the budget. There are some additional costs that go above and beyond what we had anticipated when we passed the budget, but those extra costs are not higher than the extra revenue. This year, we will end the year with a surplus. Although we have 25 days to go, we'll see, but how it is looking, we will end with the surplus. One of the examples is with the airport. We continue to sell far more fuel than what we ever anticipate. So as the airport is busier and busier, our costs go up to buy the fuel, but every time we sell that fuel, we turn around and make more money than we had anticipated.
So what do we do with the profit at the end of the year?
Over the past 10 years, what we have done with the profit is keep the profit in those funds. And so how the general fund now has a balance of well over $3 million because every year we've saved the money. Now we're not at the point that we necessarily need to do that anymore because our reserves exceed that 20% cushion that you're recommended to have. And so with the surplus, there's likely going to be a report that will be brought to you in January recommending some additional projects that have been brought forward by residents that can now be funded through the additional revenue.
And spend against the 2021 requirement or 2022 future?
So what would happen, that's money above and beyond what we had anticipated in 21. And so we would recommend saying, we don't have the exact numbers yet, but say if there's $100,000 left over, we would come to you saying, we have $100,000 surplus. We don't need to bank that. So are there additional investments you would like to make? Here's different projects that have been recommended by residents or committees or the council have discussed in the past. If you choose to fund that, then you would need to have a supplemental in your 22 budget that would be using your surplus from the 21 budget so you can do the projects.
I'm just trying to make it so that the public understands. It's almost worse to have leftover money than to be short. That's where the acquisitions come from.
Any other council discussion on second reading? How about public questions, comments, concerns for the supplemental to the 2021 budget? Is there a motion?
I will move to approve the second reading of ordinance 2021-11, the supplement to the 2021 budget.
And I will second.
Got a first by Becca and a second by Aaron. Any last discussion, council or public? This is an ordinance, so we'll go ahead and roll call. I'll start with myself. I'm yes. Becca?
Yes.
Dean?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Angela?
Yes.
And Mike.
Yes.
Supplemental is complete. Will go in the paper as soon as possible, and 20 days after that is when it goes into law. All right, we'll make it by the state's measurements. Subset B is discussion on the redistricting of wards. Mr. Ainsley, I also have you down for this. Is that correct? You okay
Yes.
with that, Danny?
Thank
Yep.
you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead.
Every 10 years, as required by the United States Constitution, a census is taken across the entire United States. Those numbers from the 2020 census were released a few months ago. What has to occur is every governmental agency now needs to reapportion the various districts so that there's an adequate number of representatives in each district. For the city of Sturgis, we have 4 wards or 4 districts. We have 2 council members that represent each ward. And so it's now required that within the next couple of months that the city would adopt new boundaries for our wards. These boundaries are supposed to follow logical geographical boundaries so that it's easy for people to know what district or what ward they would be in. And so in doing so, the city staff has prepared several different scenarios for the 4 various wards. We need to ensure when you draw the various wards that they have very close to what is called the ideal number within those ward boundaries. The city of Sturgis in the 2020 census recorded 7,020 residents. So the ideal number of residents per ward is 1,755. So we need to ensure that between the highest ward or the ward that has the most number of people and the ward that has the fewest number of people, that there's not a difference between those two greater than 10%. And so each of the districts or each of the wards has to be very close to 1,755 people. So keeping that perimeter or parameter in mind, as well as kind of logical geographic boundaries, our GIS coordinator has come up with a couple different scenarios. I believe in the council chambers, you can see some of the scenarios on the overhead in front of you. When you see these maps, the red stars indicate the current residents of each of our council members that represent those specific wards. That is another slight consideration, but that consideration, of course, cannot outweigh the logical geographic boundaries as well as having a population very close to that ideal number. When you look through, you can see that in general, Ward 1, which is the northernmost ward, needed to grow some, as did Ward 2, which is kind of our central ward. And then Ward 3 and Ward 4 had to shrink some compared to what their current boundaries are, and that's because those are the wards that have seen the most growth. So in doing so, there's several different scenarios that are included, but the one I would like to try to highlight the most is the one that the staff prefers or is recommending, and that's scenario 6. The reason that map is being recommended is it really has the cleanest boundaries. So the boundaries between wards 2 and 3 follow Junction, which is a very logical boundary. And then wards 2 and 3 are separated from Ward 1 through Sherman, which again is a very logical boundary. And then to the south, what separates Ward 2 from Ward 4 is the interstate. Again, a very logical boundary of separation. The one that is a little challenging is the separation between wards 3 and 4. It would be nice if Ward 4 could take on a little of the additional boundaries for Ward 3 to the south. That does have some additional kind of zigzags in it. Unfortunately, that's necessary in order to keep the proportionate number of individuals close to that ideal number. With that, of course, there can be amendments to any of these changes as you are discussing them. We're not asking you to actually have a recommendation tonight. We want to bring it forward to you so that you can have a discussion as well as the public. And if there's anything that we need to look at trying to address, we can spend the next 2 weeks to try to tweak this to get this as close as possible. The numbers that are inside each of these kind of blocks, those are census block numbers, and those represent the number of residents as of April 15th of 2020. So if you move one of the blocks from one ward to another, it increases the total number of residents in one ward and decreases it in the other. So that's where you have to start worrying about what the proportionate representation is. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions or let you guys start having a discussion on this.
I have a question, please. Hi, Daniel. It's Becca. My first question is, who requires the city to redraw the wards every 10 years?
That's a requirement that is passed down through the federal government. That's part of the constitutional requirement, as well as several Supreme Court rulings that have required that each of the wards or each of the districts have a proportionate number of residents within. So this is following federal guidelines.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that it was clear to people that it's not something that the city is just doing on its own volition.
Hey, Daniel, this is Aaron. On Ward 3 and Ward 4, you were talking about that little jaunt out there on the south side. Having it that way, you said maintains it closer to that 1755. If you didn't do that, is it still within the 10% variance, or is it outside that?
No, unfortunately, it would be outside. The variance between Ward 3 and Ward 4 would exceed that 10% by quite a lot.
Okay. Thanks, Daniel.
Say, Daniel, Kevin here.
Sure.
The scenario 6 doesn't have the full south side of Sturgis being displayed there. I mean, the map's cut off. Do you have the complete scenario 6 maps that the public can see?
Yes, we do, and I'm sorry if it's cut off. We can definitely post them on our website tomorrow morning, so the public can see that.
Yeah, I don't think it's too much more than what's been cut off. I think it's...
We'll make sure to post that on the website tomorrow morning.
And like you've stated, Daniel, I think the balance is trying to keep the natural boundaries along with keeping in the allowed percentage differentiation that's necessary by law. I know we've kicked this around quite a bit, but I think that I'm glad we're bringing it forward for discussion, but I don't know. It seems to me that no matter what we would do, it would still have something as an ill effect on another section of not being such a natural boundary while keeping it within the differentiation that's required. On scenario 4, I think it was, there's kind of a rounded section for Ward 3. I think it must include Junction. Or it's actually scenario 1A, if I remember right. What that does is that basically because we're dealing with Vinocker Canyon Road, there isn't a lot of development or houses, residentials out there on the south end when the census date of April 15th, 2020 was taken. I was just curious if there's any kind of blend that Laura or you guys could look at, including both the curvature of Ward 3 on 1A and staying within the percentages that are necessary.
That's missing. Here we have the full maps now.
Okay. And here's the full map.
Yeah, but this splits a neighborhood, right? I know this is a national forest here.
Is that 6 there? No, that's 1A. Yep.
There's 6.
Yep. Which certainly does make a peninsula down there. Questions, comments from council?
Straightens it up quite a bit. It really does.
Yeah. Well, and Mr. Mayor, an additional comment I have for my ward, which is Ward 2, I do like to see, I like seeing that the boundary is moved over to Junction, because as it is right now, it splits Davenport right in half. So the west side of Davenport is Ward 2 and the east is Ward 3. Thank you.
So now, which version is that?
That's current.
That's the current.
And you can see where Ward 2 goes over to Davenport. So I think Junction, that's a good reconfiguration.
Kind of intends to kind of maintain those neighborhoods together, and that's quite a divider.
About public input on the discussion of redistricting. Put it on your calendar 10 years from now. You can do it again.
Guaranteed. We'll be way out of bounds by then.
Well, for sure, with the developments that are occurring and coming down the road, it'll certainly need a new rebalance for sure.
Mr. Mayor, if I may
please
add the following comment. This presentation assumes a first reading on December 20th and a second reading on January 3rd.
Okay. Lost it all.
Comment.
Go ahead.
I just want to say thank you to the city staff who's put the time and energy into doing this. I know that it has not been an easy task, but I just want to thank you for a job well done.
So just for clarification, which option are we going to post tomorrow morning on the web? All of them?
Yep.
Yes, all of these will be posted on the website tomorrow morning.
And the recommendation is for
Scenario 6.
6.
Scenario 6.
And I think as far as the council to put it to task is by next meeting we have to be ready to do our first reading. So we have to be comfortable with where we're at with proposed and what scenario makes the most sense. Which I don't think there's a perfect situation, but I think there's been some good options brought forward. And like Becca stated, I appreciate the clear-cut boundaries and the sensible divisions.
I guess I didn't realize they had to be so closely matched by population.
They do. The deviation, really needs to be followed, and you also need to keep in mind that it needs to be contiguous and compact. So that, can really be a challenge, and that's where their hard work, I think, is really to be commended.
Any other discussion on the redistricting of the city of Sturgis, council or public? We will move on to item C, which is also a discussion. No action anticipated or able to be done on this agenda. Mr. Ainsley, I've got you down for the staff report also, but this is potential lease of the wastewater irrigation area for a racing complex. So back over to you, Daniel, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This item actually might fulfill another one of the very long-term council goals that has been discussed for almost a decade. And this goes back to 2012 when the council was approached. I'm sorry, I think it was 2013 when the council was approached by a private company that was looking at leasing the fairgrounds so that they could host numerous different racing events that would be held at the fairgrounds. At that time, residents from the surrounding neighborhood had a lot of concern about the additional dust and noise that would be coming from increased use at the fairgrounds. And then also several in the rodeo community expressed concern with the idea of having additional events there and what the impact would be on the rodeo grounds that were at the center of the half-mile track. And so before the city considered that lease agreement from Dirt Promotions, the city asked Dirt Promotions to hold a demonstration where they would have several dirt bikes that would be racing, and then people in the community could see what that would end up looking like. During that evening, there were a lot of Sturgis residents that were kind of drive around different points of the community, and everyone was pointing to the same thing, is that in our valley, you could hear a lot of the noise that would be coming from that from every direction. There was a lot of concern about what that would end up doing to a quality of life in our community. And so hearing those comments, the owners of Dirt Promotions ended up withdrawing their lease, and they thanked the city for that consideration, but said that they could tell that there was not community support behind their idea and their concept. So at that time, the city then appointed anyone who was interested to be a part of the Fairgrounds Use Committee. That committee included residents that live next to the fairgrounds. It included Jack Pine Gypsy members. It included members of the rodeo clubs. There was just a lot of individuals who expressed a lot of interest. After several meetings where they studied the issues, and ultimately they recommended that the fairgrounds be moved towards the high school, and that the half-mile track and racing facility would be moved to another location further from the city center, where its use would not have a significant impact on all of the residents within the community. Then at that point, the city began discussions with the school board to see about potentially purchasing some of the hundreds of acres of land that surround the high school, that it could be used so that it would be able to be used for rodeo facilities as well as various types of racing. After about a year of negotiations, the high school or the school board turned down that purchase but they did agree to lease to the rodeo club land so that a rodeo facility could be built. And so the rodeo facility entered into a very long-term lease with the school board and began work on relocating the rodeo facility out by the high school. Unfortunately, a lot of that work was going to be completed by the National Guard. The National Guard, due to various issues, were not able to complete that this year. So the city is trying to work with the rodeo club to see what parts the city would be able to complete so that part of the project can continue. But as far as the actual racing aspect, the idea of trying to find another piece of land so that racing could occur, it has still been something that the city has looked for several years to do. With the completion of the wastewater treatment plant that Rick was able to discuss very briefly earlier at this meeting, and we'll be able to talk about in a lot more detail next meeting, it's really brought to the forefront that the city owns a large amount of land that it used to have necessarily so that we could discharge our effluent onto the land. We would essentially irrigate it for haying. Now that we have very, very clean water, we can discharge that into Bearview Creek. So with that, there's the potential of using a portion of that land for other purposes. And with that, we have been approached by some experienced race promoters that are looking to bring racing very often to our community. However, again, knowing the impacts that racing can have, it would make sense for that not to occur in the center of town, instead to have a facility constructed that would be on the outskirts of town where there could still be an economic impact for our community, as well as additional types of recreation for our community, but not have as large of an impact for thousands of residents. There are some challenges with this property. Number one, we would have to get some permission through South Dakota Department of Environment to make sure that they agree. And we also have some areas where it would need to be avoided. There's a lot of different things we would need to be working out with this developer. But with that being said, if it's something the council is interested in pursuing, that's something that the city staff could be working with this group of race promoters to see if it's a workable solution so that we could bring additional events to our community, hopefully not have as large of an impact on our residents, and see that this land would be able to be used more frequently. So we don't have a lot of specifics because this is in the very, very early stages. What we're looking at is this something that the council's interested in dedicating some staff time to work with these race promoters to see if it would be something that we would be able to meet the various challenges of the site, but still make sure that the opportunity is something we can bring forward to the community.
Thanks, Daniel. Any questions from council for Daniel? I imagine we have some of the people involved here present. You guys want to come up and speak, please? Is that something you planned on doing? Certainly appreciate your input. Brad, Brandon, and Luke, is that correct? Is that who we have? Correct. Yep. All right. Well, welcome, and I'll turn it over to you. Yep.
Sure. I guess first and foremost, I didn't know if you guys had any questions as far as what our, kind of short-term, long-term plans are. I can give you a brief overview. It won't take up a ton of everyone's time tonight. What we would like first and foremost from a very short timeline, we would like to put on essentially motocross events right away, with maybe potential growth into a small circle track for some of the kart racing community, mini sprints, things like that. Obviously dependent on the property out there, how we can use it, what parts of it we can use. I understand there are some hurdles that come along with the different water runoffs, and part of that piece of property that's up there has to be used for the filtration of the water, things like that. So we can't touch the wetlands. So there's certain parts of the property that are usable, but other parts that are not. Brad here is the current president of the SDMA, the South Dakota Motocross Association. If we can figure out a way to make this happen, we would like to hold races as soon as this summer on that piece of property. Willing that we'd have a committee that could help us put that together. You guys have anything to say?
Yeah, I think you pretty much hit it there. I guess the idea, just on a personal standpoint, since I got the opportunity to do this, I've been racing motocross in this area since 1994, and now I have kids racing, and I've seen Sturgis I've had to go past Sturgis, and I've always had to see that track off the side that we weren't really welcome to go to at the Jack Pine Gypsies, and then we'd have to go up to Wyoming, or we go to North Dakota or wherever, and they haven't had a really good, solid track here. And now I'm sitting here, 40 years old, and have a kid riding, and more into this sport than I've ever been in my life. I'm the president of the South Dakota Motocross Association. I sell motocross parts for a living. I have people all over the world I talk to in regards to this every day. So it's my life and it's my love, and I see this opportunity. And we have great backing right now. We have people that have wanted this for a long time, and so we have a lot of good backing when it comes to finances to help, which is huge. Volunteering time, equipment, fuel, the stuff to make this happen. Like now, I've been working on it 2 years, and I've talked to numerous people, and we just haven't made anything happen yet.
And we actually have a track builder that is actually a national track builder willing to come in and professionally build the track, not just be like a bunch of people out there with their farm equipment trying to till up some ground. We put a lot of time and effort into this. One thing to add to what Brad had said, we didn't have a single race for the South Dakota Motocross Association within 180 miles of here. We literally had to travel for our own race series over 100 miles every time we had a race last summer. We literally could not get a local race. So we would love to have a home track that is everyone's home track, and not just race on it, but we'd like to have, structured practices. We do have a couple people involved with us that are actually getting their AMA license for training. We'd like to have some training camps. We want to take this farther than just, hey, let's have a few races every summer and then pack it up and go home. Like we want this to be something that is happening on a weekly basis. So
that'd be a nice thing about, of course, not being aware of the fairgrounds would be an obvious issue, and we knew that from the start. That would be a tough deal, but we came in looking at that spot. But also, I guess to point out, motocross is for all ages, but then there's also a side where you have kids that really come in from the young ages of 4 to 6, we'll say, and there's a mini track at some of these better racing developments. We want to have the best. And we want to have that so the kids can really start to learn and not have to go all the way to North Dakota, or start on these big tracks and go over these huge, massive, intimidating things and learn the wrong way. It's not the wrong way, but everybody that gets a chance in these bigger places, they learn from scratch on the small track, get to the big track. We don't have that opportunity here. So that's another big thing for me. And then lastly, I'll point out, I was involved with Deadwood All In last season. I don't know if you guys knew about that up in Deadwood. That was
both of us were.
Yeah, all of us were, and he's a sponsor on that too. And we got a deal for 2 more races this next year, so Deadwood was really happy with that. And we're working with James Carter on that deal. He's a promoter and a freestyle legend, really. He's a pro racer, a pro rider. Yeah. We've had great success up there, and we're looking at expanding that this next year. So that's another deal we're involved with.
So, did you have any questions for us, or?
Sure, I do. Well, thank you so much for appearing here this evening. I want to say that I think that this proposal is really intriguing. I think that it speaks to, what I would see and is continued support of recreation here in Sturgis in our community. We have the trails, and I think, this would just be a great fit for us. And I think it speaks to the quality of life and youth sports and what it could really teach, our children. And for you to hear that the support of the SDMA, I mean, that I think, I'm really glad to hear that. Can you just really quickly tell me what, for a race, what is the average number of participants? How many people do you have as far as spectators? Just kind of those numbers.
So as far as spectators, I guess to give an example, we also do the indoor motocross and rapid. And last month,
We don't do it where
we don't do it. We race there. Like my daughter races, his son races,
That's the Grable's operation.
Yeah, that's the Grable's operation. They're friends of ours, and they had 380 entries. Okay. So you start, and they've had 460 last year. Towards the end of the year, we had one month where it was 460. One of the hurdles with the outdoor season, sometimes the numbers are maybe slightly lower. Mm-hmm. But that's probably also due to the fact that we always have to travel. And a lot of families can't travel 200 miles for 3 days every other weekend. I'm fortunate enough I can do that. But, spectator-wise, I mean, you're probably talking, I would say, I guess I would base on pit passes because that's kind of how everyone does it. But I wouldn't believe that you would have any less than 400, 500 on a weekend, especially if it's a big weekend.
To be a good realistic.
That's on top of the rider entry fees. That's just the actual people that pay to be inside the fence, basically.
Okay. And especially would be our idea is that we want this to be for spectators too. And everything we envision that we don't get, we want to make happen. Obviously, and and we are spectators. I don't race anymore. I'm 40 years old, and I'm a spectator now. I like to see the track and the race. So all this is envisioning in our head is how do we complete this? For the experience of the racer from
this piece of property. I mean, obviously we've been out there, we've looked at it. We went out on Sunday actually, which was a lot of fun, but and we just dug a few small holes just to see what the dirt was like, and it was pretty dang good no matter where we did it at. Now obviously there's only certain areas of that land that we could use, but also the layout of that land would allow a spectator to visually see the whole track. So that's kind of a nice feature of that. There's a few tracks we go to where you can't see anything.
So with those land limitations, there's sufficient property out there to achieve your vision there?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like we walked off 40 acres is what a couple of the messages we had back and forth with Daniel. It's kind of just a benchmark we've been talking about, or 40 or whatever. And it's well more than enough. Most of these racing facilities we go to, like they said, like Jack Pine, that whole piece of property is 48 acres. The track, the hill climb, and everything involved in that is 48 acres, the circle track, everything. Obviously, when we have big race weekends, there's numerous campers. There's people that will stay in hotels. There's people that will, that's the other side of it. A lot of people will just bring their trailer. They'll stay in town, eat in town, whatever, and then they'll come back and race in the morning or whatever. So that's, that's the other side of that is a lot of that space is going to be taken up by people that in campers or whatnot.
Local campgrounds get used up a lot in our areas too, like Menotis and Gillette and stuff. And even in Deadwood, this last one, they filled up the campground right next door there.
Yep. So there's, I think that, and that's without really having any local growth over the last, I don't even know the last time the sport locally has had an opportunity to grow at a local level. Yeah. And we are very focused on the young kids and making it, year over year, just expanding the amount of people that are willing to do this. So that we want to give them opportunities.
So you guys have the resources then to, once something is built, to be able to maintain it, sustain it?
Yes, I believe so. The track itself, like we have already talked, and if we have like a practice day, we want to make sure that the track is 100% fully prepped. We don't ever want anyone on that track where it's, for an example, the way Gillette does it, if they have a practice, they just give you a key to the fence. You can go ride it whenever you want. Well, there's some safety concerns there. The track isn't good, whatnot. But we believe that, really to maintain a track once it's built is we need a couple skid steers and a water truck, or some way of putting water on the track, and a piece of farm implement equipment with like a disc or something like that. We have most of the equipment already, actually. So as far as coming up with equipment and things like that, that's not really that big of an issue.
What about future reclamation?
Future reclamation, I mean, it really depends on, I guess, what the EPA or
Well, they changed their
DNR
name,
or whatever.
so it's not DENR anymore, but that's the same one.
Yeah, DNR or whatever the current entity is. I would assume without permanent structures, of course, it's a matter of just basically leveling the land back out to where it was at. I mean, we're not. I mean, right now, as far as what we're talking about is we're building some jumps, we're building a few features, but at the end of the day, if it had to be reclaimed, basically, it's probably spending a weekend out there with a front end loader or a grader and just basically knocking everything down and putting it back out, and then, at most maybe reseeding it with, whatever we need to use to reseed it with hay or whatever that land was previously used for.
The original thought was,
Mike, that's one of those questions that we truly do need to get answered from Danner. But with that being said, before we even begin doing that, we just want to see, is this a proposal that the council is interested in? And if so, then we will work to try to find some of those answers for you.
Well, I think the DNA of Sturgis is definitely intertwined with the racing. I think it's been a challenge over the last decade with racing in Sturgis because of the facilities. So this is exciting to me if this is something that can be worked out. There's plenty of work to do, but the opportunity is good.
You're going to find a lot more riders locally than you imagine.
Well, it's interesting because we have the largest amount of people and riders right here, and we literally have nowhere to go. We have to travel, and it seems that Sturgis, of all places, to not have a refined, nice motocross track just seems absolutely insane to us. Like we can't believe this hasn't happened yet.
But even what you guys stated, that at some point the development of a circle track and on and on, it's all natural, and I think it all makes sense if A, the facility is correct, and B, the people running it are correct. And it's exciting. It's what we've had challenges of in the past with the fairgrounds and those facilities. So
I know I'm going to put the horse in front of the cart here, but what type of organization do you propose to incorporate all of this?
Good question.
What was the question?
What we were going to do is basically we were going to do an LLC in a partnership.
Form an LLC,
We were
lease the land, and of course, then
plan for the divorce before the honeymoon, the whole works.
But and obviously that's with the direction of a committee or whatever to try to figure out what's amicable for everybody and what works for everybody. We've all talked about this. We're not going into this thinking that we can just say, hey, here's a parcel of land, go out there with your tractors and just start tearing it up. We have no, even to the point of, we would like to show you overlays of what the track would look like, how it would look like on that piece of property, where we want to park things, and really plan it. We don't want this to just be some shotgun deal that, like I said, everyone just parked in a field running around in circles on their dirt bikes. It's not. That doesn't have any kind of an end game,
And to bounce off that, that's why we weren't interested in making this with the organization of South Dakota Motocross, because when I hand that over to the next person, we don't want to hand the track over, obviously, and expect that whoever takes this project on is be able to keep that going. So that's the reality of us thinking that we need to do this, and of course for the financial side of it.
And as things, our blue sky long-term goal would to be that maybe eventually we actually lease or whatever, however we do it, we rent out the track to like the AMA for a national qualifier race. Things like that. That's the end game here, is to actually have national races. Then you start talking, I think the last one in Ponca City, there was like 1,200 riders is what was there for that weekend, for that 3-day weekend. And it's one of the biggest ones in the country. And that was at the end of the season after Loretta Lynn's. So, I mean, there's a potential, especially with having Sturgis attached to it, there's a potential that this could grow into something that is very big and nationally recognized. But obviously you have to start small. You have to be able to manage it from a small point and then worry about that later.
Ultimately, where would you like the northern part of the property, or?
I think the only spot that would be you'd be able to use is the more northern part of the property, and the reason I say that is because
I guess ultimately, where would you like it? I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, point right there to the, he's on it pretty much, the upper section.
kind of the upper, more northern section. There's a lot of hurdles with that lower section because that is that runoff with the wetlands and the filtration they talk about with the water.
That's the best part of irrigating as well.
That top part is? The north part?
The top?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to want the same part I want.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, we're open. Obviously, we're looking at this as an opportunity, and that's why we're coming forth to you and seeing if we can set up some way to, see what's amicable for everyone. We're not, obviously, we don't have enough cards to hold to say no. We want this particular spot right here, and that's the only thing that's going to work for us.
The other thing is it has to be a secure site. You can't be out there, and you shouldn't have been out there.
Oh, okay.
It's not open to the public just because it's city property.
Okay.
The fences and the signs, and so part of our permit says is that we keep that, that it's not accessible to the public. So any part that we use as a race course, we're going to have to somehow fence out from the rest of the facility.
Yeah, and we were very aware of having to fence around that and have separate access to it. So, and it would make more sense to be either on the somewhere towards the western side of that property, just because of land access, road access, things like that. I mean, but really that comes down. Obviously, you guys are going to give us a lot of direction as far as what's actually available to use for that.
Yeah. Kind of part of our outlook too is the further inward on the property that we have to go, that's more road that we have to either improve or build. Building a road across that field makes part of that field unusable for anything else. So we want to be respectful of the property as well.
And we'd like to have exposure to the track from the road, so when people drive by, they go, oh, there's a motocross track there. Oh, there's a big sign there that says such and such with a website or whatever. I need to check this out, and hopefully drive some of that. But obviously, we're at a stage right now where we don't, we're really not sure. We know where the land's at. We kind of understand that part of it, and that's hopefully we can just move forward from there right now.
Well, I think there's certainly a lot of work to do involved, but
yeah.
Daniel, what's your time frame on getting direction to? You talking beginning of January or right away or what?
Well, if the council wants us to look at it, this is something that between Rick and I will start looking at the various different agencies that we're going to have to start seeking approval from and start going through that. Truth be told, we've never gone through this process, so we can't guarantee what the process is going to be with Danner as far as getting their approval and everything else. But we would begin that process to see what their thoughts are, what are the actions we would need to take, and then we would be working with the promoters here to inform them of the process that we would need to go through. Maybe there's certain areas of the property where the process would be easier, whatever it happens to be. But if the council is interested, we'll begin working on it. I can't give you an exact date, but I imagine after we work on it for a couple of months, we can probably tell you a little more.
Right. We showed up in Pier a few times unannounced and still didn't make any difference.
Well, we've got adjoining property owners, but right now I've got a potential 5 new writers at my house every holiday.
Oh, very good. I love hearing that.
I like hearing that.
What's your capital outlay?
We really haven't gone that far because we're not sure what we're even available to right here. Like what we're even going to be capable of doing.
Well, what if you owned a piece of property and you're going to build your dream? What's your capital outlay?
We haven't even gone that far. So.
And then start off with, like we said, we've been trying to build a track for the kids and for our racers in our area, and profit had nothing to do with any of it. And being sustainable was the whole idea. And then we come up with new opportunities where we say, let's go beyond the South Dakota Motocross Association and let's talk about doing this as a group. So this is new. The idea of actually, being able to maybe pull a profit, to be able to expand on profits is maybe a new idea, considering we dropped doing South Dakota Motocross Association and doing it as a team, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I was just curious, if you guys have done any numbers on what you're proposing to build.
I mean, we know what races can bring in.
We've ran some rough numbers as far as I guess as far as what we're going to need for equipment, getting someone there to actually physically build the track. Start with that, but at the same time, without owning this piece of property, I can't also say, well, I'm going to build this building and this facility because I don't own any of it. So if anything I would build out there, even if I got approved to build it, I don't own any of it. So really at that point, it's any structure, anything I bring out there has to be removable, or I have to just eat the cost of it.
That's not necessarily true, though.
Or pay reclamation.
Well,
yeah, that's a big thing. We'll have to talk about that as we move on.
But yeah, if we can at some point attain a long-term lease agreement, then capital improvements, things like that would definitely be on the table. But until we know, we really don't even know that yet. No, so it's really hard to say, we intend to make this much money, put this much back into it and whatnot year over year. So
we'd love to stay in and ask for a certain amount of years, but we don't know if they want to give that to us.
and we fully plan on, when we get a few more of the details nailed down and seeing if this is actually viable. I already do have a banker involved. We do have a lawyer involved. That when we're ready to move forward on this, we will have a legitimate business plan with those type of numbers, with all those set things in it that we can show you and say, hey, this is what we plan on doing. This is how much money we're investing right now in it to make all this happen.
And this is if this doesn't happen, it doesn't mean that we're done. I mean, this would work best.
This was just a great opportunity.
But we're not done, and until we get this done somewhere.
Well, any other discussion from council? Questions? How about any other thing from the public? Again, this is just discussion. There's a lot of work to be done.
500 and some.
Not near what we need. It's like, it's almost 600. Yeah.
We would only be looking to use
40 to 60.
That's Highway 79, correct?
Yeah, right on that yellow line on the west there.
You getting your question answered, Deb?
She was just showing me where Highway 79 was to give me some
parameters.
Basically across the highway from the drag strip. So the drag strip's on the other side of that highway.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Looks like there's a lot of land that we could, we just don't know the details,
Yeah, we don't know what piece of it we can use.
Step.
Yeah, we're just kind of, this is the preliminary thing where we're trying to figure everything out, so.
And Rick, that's your watershed? That's our treatment. That's where we irrigate.
That's pod 4 where it's irrigated.
Yep.
Can I ask you one thing about that? Will any of that change with being now that you're so clean you can dump into the creek? Will that requirement, any of that change with that being said?
It could. Our current permit, we just got it in 2021 and it doesn't expire until 2026. So that would be the logical time to probably look and see what we have to do for reclamation to clear it out of our permit. We could certainly go to the Danner and request to pull a portion out of it. I don't think they would allow us to remove everything until probably 2026 to make sure that we don't need it. But again, we've never proposed that to them. So, I mean, they may say, no, it's under permit, you can't manage it.
Right.
I mean, until we go make those phone calls, I mean, it'd be premature to say that. So,
absolutely.
I think we have a much greater likelihood of being able to pull out a smaller 40-acre, 50-acre, whatever, than trying to remove the whole property. At some point in time, there's going to be reclamation that we have to do. Right now, with being under permit, there's certain things that we do have to do as far as ground monitoring, water monitoring. That water can't be applied and used. If we do, you've got to wait 15 days before the public can be on it. test results are within this category, then that extends out 30 days. So there's certain criteria that we have to meet.
And that would be regardless until that new, even if it was cleaned out and perfect by that time, wouldn't make a difference until that new.
Until we get a new permit.
Yeah.
I mean, that property is under that.
That was the question I had. Yeah.
So, can we modify that? Certainly. What is the process? I don't know. Like you said, our last permit took over 10 years to get. I mean, you're talking, and believe me, we pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, and it still took that long. So, maybe we can do a modification. Maybe it's a 6 month. I mean, I have no idea.
Okay.
But certainly we call the right people and ask them, and they will tell us what we need to do to get that, even if it's even feasible.
Right, absolutely. Thank you for the info. I appreciate that.
Rick, I guess another question then. Since that water, isn't really usable, is there any other water source on the property?
There's no utilities. We have, of course, electricity to the blower buildings, but there's nothing. There's no utilities, no water, no power, no internet, I mean, it's there and available. There's a power line that goes right through our property, but you would have to drop it. I mean, we don't have it already dropped and ready to hook in. So, those are things that we have to look at too.
Yeah.
Nearest water that we're gonna have is right here in town. I mean, that's all Fairview Valley water out that way. So we don't have any potable water out there.
Yeah, and for what we would need, because there's no anything that we use wouldn't be any human consumption. No, it all
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can't have livestock on it for 15 days, let alone.
Is that right? Oh,
Yeah, that's kind of the way I understood it. So, yeah, so I guess.
Well, we have plenty of work to do for sure. Appreciate the avid discussion and see what develops from here. Thanks, you guys.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
We got a point of contact for
Yep,
this,
Daniel's been working with them, so yep, we'll get back with upper staff and go from there after some discussions. Item 13 is other matters before the council. Does the public have anything to add that is not on the agenda? Come on up.
Mr. Mayor, my name is Kit Jeffries. I represent Puffy's LLC, one of the applicants for the medical cannabis establishments. I just had a question and a comment, if I may. And the question would actually be for Mr. Marshall. And I'm just trying to get clarification on the ordinance for section 39-1-5B and how the council landed on January 19th as the date instead of December 20th for the lottery.
Applications were due November 23rd.
Mark, you better get up to the microphone.
Applications were due November 23rd. The applications will be first presented to the council on December 20th. 30 days after December 20th is January 19th.
Okay. That was just the question I had, and if I may follow up with some comments. Well, again, I represent Puffy's LLC. I just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Marshall and Faye and David and everybody for their hard work going into the ordinance and all the work that's got us to this point in the medical cannabis establishment licensing process. And I just wanted to give a little background on Puffy's. Puffy's was formed because there was limited licenses within the Black Hills, and this gave opportunity for out-of-state stakeholders to see value in our region. With fewer licenses, this means increased valuation of the licenses. Puffy's membership is 100% South Dakotans working to get this industry set up with South Dakota values.
I hate to interrupt, Mayor and Council, but I'm not sure it's appropriate to have an advocate for one of the licenses
at this point in time
addressing the council under this situation.
Appreciate that, Mark. Mr. Jeffers, you better wait. I think that possibly on the 20th, come back up and visit us when we revisit this for the submittal of. Faye will present the proposed applications.
Okay.
So
well,
tackle
Mr. Mayor, appreciate your time, and thank you guys again for all your hard work. It's been truly remarkable to see all the work that's been put in, and I just appreciate everybody that's come in and done all the critical thinking. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Other matters before the council not on the agenda. Public. How about council? Anything to add?
Are we going to recess or to adjourn?
Well, we're going to go back. We do have a necessity to go back to executive session. So we'll need a motion for exec.
So moved.
Got a first by Becca.
Second.
Second by Aaron. It's 8:14. We'll go into exec at 8:20. Thank you.